What's up, everyone? We're back again for the final session of today. And not just that, the final session of Design Cuts Live 2019. It's been a wild ride this week. It's been a ton of fun. I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. And I'm thrilled to welcome our final speaker, none other than Mr. Christo. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good, very good. I'm pumped to do this with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm really excited to jump in. I think this is such a crucial topic for designers. And it's something, I don't know if you experienced this, I get a lot of pushback when I talk about being a specialist and niching. People can be a bit resistant, maybe a bit confused. So I think we're going to shine some clarity on that subject today, right?
Yep, we sure are.
I love it. Well, you put together an awesome presentation. So without further ado, I say let's jump straight in.
Okay, let me share my screen.
Perfect. And while Chris is bringing this up, let us know, where are you tuning in from today? People all over the world have been enjoying the conference so far. So let us know.
Yeah, they were mentioning in the comments right before where they're watching from. So it's all over the world. It's an international audience that you have there, Tom.
Well, same as you, right? But I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, we looked this up. We got community members in every country in the world, including in Antarctica, which is pretty cool.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, we got some intrepid explorers out there. Perfect. So being a generalist versus being a specialist, over to you, Chris.
Yes. Hey, everybody, what's going on? So today I'm going to talk to you about the differences between a generalist and specialist. And I think the creative nature is to want to do different things all the time. I find myself guilty of this. This is not judgment on anybody. This is just one perspective. And I hope to walk you through a very logical presentation in your mind, and hopefully you can play along. Obviously, this would be better interactive, but that's all right. Let's get into it. So today I've broken down the presentation into 5 components, and hopefully I've not made any typos. I was making some last-minute adjustments here just for Tom and the amazing Design Cuts audience. So I'm going to talk about positioning, heuristics, applications, benefits, and give you a summary at the end because I want to make sure you have something to do. This is not one of those let's get inspired talks. This is really like, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's figure out how to do this together. So the question that I always get from people is, should I specialize? Should you specialize, or should you niche down? Why does it matter? Isn't it better just to do a lot of different things? And isn't that what we're taught in design school? Well, let's get into it. There's something I've borrowed or picked up from Blair Enns, the author of Win Without Pitching Manifesto. He told me in a live stream together that there are 2 levels of success. There are 2 levels. The first level is when you say yes to everything. This is when you're young, you're starting out. And when I say young, I mean, even as a child, you explore things, you try different foods, you go to different places, you read different kinds of fiction and nonfiction. This is good, and you should do this. And so when you get out of school, clients will ask you to design a brochure, a website, design some packaging, and you say yes to it all. This leads you to the success that you have. Unfortunately, what starts to happen is you become so diverse and so broad, your progress and your growth starts to slow down. So level 2 success requires you to say no to almost everything. And this requires you to be super selective. And this is how you get to the next level of success. And this is what I'm going to focus on. So naturally, people are going to ask, are there exceptions? And of course, there are exceptions. And I talked to an exceptional person yesterday in Austin Kleon. Austin Kleon is the author of the best-selling book, Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work. He's exceptional in that he's a hobbyist musician, he's a poet, he's a writer, and he's a writer that likes to draw. And he's able to put all these skills together to have quite a successful and lucrative career being that person. Now, those unicorns exist, and unfortunately, what happens is they kind of pop up on the radar for us, so then we use those people as standard bearers of what we should be. But then you have to be an exceptional person. What about for the rest of us? Well, let's bring us all back to reality, snap back to reality, okay? Let's talk about what's going on. These are some points that I've kind of highlighted for you guys to consider. The world is drowning in undifferentiated creative businesses. We know that. They're all over the place. And we live in a time of mass over-communication. This is what's going on. Everybody's calling for attention. There's so much information that's out there. And the world is getting smaller, thankfully, to the internet. That means that you can be anywhere and do anything from wherever you're at, which is awesome. But that also means that there's this tremendous competition in the global workspace. And we also know that there are a proliferation of quote unquote creative marketplaces like Fiverr, 99 Designs, which is making it really hard for us to compete. And some even offer all you can eat design. Pay us one monthly fee and you can have as many projects done, unlimited revisions. That sounds horrible to me. Now, luckily, your brain is designed to protect you from irrelevant information. And just to demonstrate, take a look at this. Can you spot the swimmer here? Right, because when everybody looks the same, this is what happens. It's an overcrowded space and it's hard for us to stand out. And if we want to get work, we have to learn how to stand out. How do we get more opportunities? How do we get more at-bats or leads? Well, the simple advice is make it easier to find you than your competitor. You have to stand out. So here's a little test, a little exercise for you guys to play along with me, okay? How long does it take for you to spot south? I want you to look at this. Maybe
it was like 2 seconds, maybe.
You found it that fast, Tom?
Yeah, but my eyes.
You're really good.
Oh, you're too sweet.
Yeah, really. So
but
if we look,
I was looking everywhere though at first, right?
Yeah. So it takes some effort to find this, and some of you guys are still looking for it. So let me try to change it. Let me make it a little easier for you. How easy is it to spot south now? Much easier. And how about now?
Yep.
So hopefully this is starting to hint at where or how I feel about specialization versus being a generalist, okay? So it's much easier to spot you because we're wired to spot the differences. So the first question is, what makes you different? I want you to think about that. Most people say, well, I do motion design. I'm a brand strategist. I'm a graphic designer. Well, now you compete with everybody that uses the exact same label. So I'm going to launch into it. I'm going to talk about positioning. What is it? How do you do it? And let's understand it. And I want to take away some of the marketing mumbo jumbo. I want to make it clear for you. Okay. So Tom, I'm going to ask for your help because I can't see any of the questions or comments that are coming in. So if somebody has a question, just interrupt me and let me know. Or if you have a question, let me know.
I will. Right. So yeah, guys, use the ask a question feature if you have a broader question that maybe we cover at the end with Q&A. But if it's something specific to like one of the slides, put it in the live question comment field, and I'll kind of relay that to Chris.
Okay. So very few people that I would ask this question to would say, of the two you prefer, do you prefer to be viewed as an amateur or do you prefer to be viewed as an expert? Not what you would call yourself, but how others see you. Well, let's try to understand something. When you're an amateur, there are many substitutes for you. And you basically win work by competing on price. So you start to feel this downward pressure that if you charge more than the next person, the next gal or guy, you're going to lose the opportunity. And what happens is when you start to work with clients, they tend to dictate the terms of how to work. I need 4 of these by this date, and this is how much I'm going to pay. And mostly amateurs, we would say, have like a very cursory knowledge, like a surface level knowledge of what it is they're doing. They've dabbled in cooking, they've dabbled in writing poetry or singing songs, they've dabbled in lots of things. So they have surface level knowledge. Whereas as we travel to the right, you'll see that experts, like true experts, have very little competition. They are able to charge a price premium, which means that they can be the most expensive option and people still hire them. And I'll get into this in a little bit. And they're given control because if you see them as an expert, why would you hire an expert, pay more, only to tell them what to do? Well, experts, by nature, because of the word, they have deep expertise. They've put in their Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of practicing something. So the goal of positioning is to ultimately reduce or eliminate competition. If you can eliminate, that would be amazing. But at least let's reduce the field down. And I do this mostly for all the martial arts fans, but I love this quote from Bruce Lee. He says, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times."
Yeah, I love that quote.
It's a favorite. So here we go. Heuristics. Let's get into it. Heuristics is a fancy word for saying our brain can't process the whole world, so we start to make little mental shortcuts. And I want to talk about that because once we start to understand how people see us and the amount of information we have to process in a day, we have to make really fast decisions. So let's get into it. I want to ask you, and play along with me in the comments, how do you measure expertise? What things signal to others that you're an expert? I want you to think about that for a little bit. We talk about signal and signaling, the things that you do that affects somebody else and how they're able to make a snap decision about what it is that you do. I want you to think about that. So I've done this with my pro community, basically a peer-to-peer coaching group that I run. And a lot of them will say something like this. And I just did this recently on Twitter, so this information is very fresh, okay? People will say, well, your portfolio tells people that you're an expert, right? And then the question is, well, who gets to decide if your portfolio is good? Is there a universal standard? Is there even a standard to think about? Or is it up to each individual to make that decision? And how do you make that decision? So if I were to pull 100 of you and showed you a portfolio and asked you to rank it from 1 to 10, I'm pretty sure the score will be all over the place. And what we need to do is we have to start thinking about moving from a subjective criteria to an objective criteria. So if we are set that a portfolio is what tells you that you're an expert, well, let's look at that. And if we say that there are people that we really look up to, people who are really experienced and knowledgeable, the wise elders of our tribe, if they can come to a consensus and say, well, that portfolio or that body of work is good, maybe then we can agree. So somebody might say then, okay, so if we move away from subjectivity to objectivity, juried awards might make sense. Okay, maybe we can agree to that. So portfolio maybe is important, but maybe the awards that are from organizations that we think are great that are juried might mean a little bit more. Okay, let's keep going down this list. Some people say case studies, maybe the degree in which you get, and this is propagated by a lot of the schools, and we're kind of indoctrinated to believe if we have a degree from Harvard or Princeton or some famous school, the Royal College of Art and Design or something like that, then it counts for something. Maybe put an asterisk on that. We'll come back to that later.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to start to fill this out. People say years of experience, having a really clear process, big name clients, or maybe have a really big audience that provides social proof or testimonials. Okay, Tom, are they starting to write in answers in the comments?
They are. Do you want to hear some of them?
Yeah, let's hear some of them. I have more, but keep going. Go ahead.
All right, so we've got a bunch of them. So some people are saying how you carry yourself. So projecting inner knowing confidence rather than cockiness, not being pushy, that kind of thing. People are talking about the consistency of your work. Some people are saying it's all about the action that actually demonstrates this, the evidence of what you're claiming. Have you actually got that track record? Have you got the proof of the action? Some people are definitely saying past clients. A lot of people are saying how you come across. So how you present yourself. Yeah.
This is good. Okay, so I'm going to ask your audience, and the answers they're providing are fantastic. It's kind of similar to what the discussion I was having on Twitter recently, which is how you come across. Like, if we're talking about an over-communicated world, meaning I have seconds to make a decision about whether or not you're an expert, how much time do you want me to invest in figuring out how you carry yourself, how consistent you are?
Yeah,
and your action. It's not that easy to communicate, is it?
Yeah, I think people are inherently they have short attention spans, right? So you need to. We all do. Up front.
Yeah, I think there's a book on this called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and we make a lot of decisions kind of in a snap judgment. We decide, I like this person, I trust this person, I should look out for that person, I should be scared, I should be comfortable, and then later on we start to think it through. So I'm starting to fill this in now, right? So some people say things like authority or clout. Like, how do I measure these things? These things are important because we're communicating across hundreds or if not thousands or tens of thousands of miles or kilometers to other people that we should be trusted, that we are valuable, and that we're experts. So things like self-confidence, I can't find out if you're confident or not until I meet you and talk to you and see how you carry yourself. So these things are really important to think about, okay? How we communicate from one to many over distance in a short period of time. So I'm starting to fill all this stuff out, and I did this with my group. So there's a bunch of things in there. So you might say, well, if you've spoken at an event, okay, speaker, that's pretty good. What if you authored an article or wrote a book? What if there was a wait list for people to work with you? So these things start to signal things to other people. For example, when you show up at a restaurant and there's a line out the door, or you can't get seating for hours. And restaurants know this, so they artificially control access to the restaurant. Sometimes, and this has happened to me, I'll wait outside for 30 minutes. And once I get brought inside, I see empty tables. You see, those are signals. These are heuristics that we're talking about. Somebody might say, well, if you've taught other people, or if you're a funded organization, or whatever it might be, multiple offices, whatever it is, it's all filling in. So now we have to ask, go ahead, Tom.
I got an interesting question from Abby, who said, can you just tell people that you're an expert?
How does that work?
Well, I was going to say, I'm guessing the strategy isn't, hi, I'm an expert. That probably wouldn't be the way to do it.
Well, let's talk about this. If I tell you I'm an expert, how does that make you feel, Tom?
It makes me feel the exact opposite of what you're telling me.
Yeah, usually we have this resistance. We don't like to be told what to think.
Yeah, and so it's like a rich man doesn't have to tell you he's rich kind of thing.
That's right. And a person that's generous shouldn't have to say that either. And we observe, and we should come to that conclusion. And if you've been following along on any of the posts I've done, branding isn't what you say it is. It's what they say it is. It's a person's gut feeling about you. So you definitely don't want to come across as saying, I'm an expert. That's problematic for a lot of different reasons. And if you want to get torn down on the internet, just go start telling people you're an expert and see what happens. Okay. So what we want to do is say, this list could be hundreds deep. We need to prioritize. We need to take a moment to prioritize what's important to us. And through my coaching group, they identified 6 things. They said, okay, credible awards. And I'm not even saying this is my list. This is just what the group said. Big name clients. If you worked with the big ones like Nike, Adidas, or Audi, or some big company. Yep. Because people like to work with people who they look up to and say, you know what? You've worked with BMW. If you're good enough for them, you must be good enough for us. And then we get into case studies, testimonials, which you talked about. If you're able to teach others, because that's knowledge demonstrated, that helps. That communicates to people. Maybe this person is an expert, maybe. And there's one in here that not a lot of people think about, but actually a high price. We automatically assume that if something costs more, it must be better. And I know I'm going to get pushback on this, but just look into your life right now. When you walk down the aisleway and you're picking out a bottle of wine, if you don't know that much about wine, you generally assume the more expensive wine is better. When you're looking at cars, think about the different series, the 3 series, the 5 series, the 7 series, BMW. One costs a lot more. We start to assume things that are higher priced are better. And the reason why is because most of the decisions we make are on a gut emotional level. They're made from the limbic brain. So the emotions are the things that drive our decisions. And then we use the neocortex to justify using logic why we should feel a certain way. Hence the whole luxury goods market. Okay, so these are some things to think about. So let's get into it. Let's apply this to something. So what is positioning? Positioning is simply discipline for industry. What do you do and who do you do it for? And you can write this in clever ways, but Blair uses this process in where he said no adjectives, use as few words as possible, incomplete sentences, so you get to the raw part of it, so you really understand what it is you're doing. So discipline for industry, what does that look like? So what you do, and that could be a lot of different things, and if we went up and down the spectrum and pulled every single person in here, they're going to rattle off a bunch of things that they do. So that's one thing. The other thing is we got to look at industry, who you do it for. So I do branding for vegan caterers. I get that. I do packaging for sustainable products for dogs. Becomes very clear.
I just got another question actually from Tanu, which says, how should we project ourselves in the market if we want to gain attention and trust from customers? I guess that's kind of what you're showing here though.
Yes.
A lot of this will naturally build trust with customers if you're perceived as an expert.
Yeah, so we're talking about a marketing question, and that would probably be another hour for me to talk about, which I can. So let's save that for Q&A. How do you get attention, okay? So I'm just make a note here.
It's right. I'll tell you what, Chris, don't worry about the note. Tanu, if you could put it in the ask a question thing below the live stream, we're going to get through all of those questions after this session.
Okay, so now let's put this into action. What discipline do you practice? And you guys can do this. You can do this right now. You can get out a notebook or a piece of paper or something. Let's do this together, okay? So here's a grid I've created. It's an X and Y grid here. So on the top, write down all the different disciplines that you think you're good at. I'll give you a second to write this. What is it?
Notepads at the ready, guys.
You ready? So,
Mhm.
Tom, what are you good at? What discipline do you practice?
I'm good at building companies. I don't know if that's too broad for
It's
this
too broad.
exercise. Okay.
Maybe not. Picture an audience member and answer for them then.
All right. No, I'll tell you what. Brand design. Does that work?
Brand design. Perfect.
Yeah.
What else? Marketing?
Yeah, like marketing consultancy.
Yeah. Look, what else?
Coaching. Group
Coaching. Copywriting.
Yep.
Right? So you're going to go down that list. So I'll show you what a list looks like. I just put this together here. So let's look at it. So when I talk to designers, they go all over the place and they'll say something like this. I'm like, what's your discipline? Well, I do logo design, packaging, web design, copywriting. I do a little animation. Oh, of course, I'm a brander, so I do branding. And sometimes I do a little UX, UI, web design, video content creation, illustration, photography, underwater juggling. They just put in every single thing. Okay, and that's fine. That's totally fine. So maybe your list looks like this, and there's no judgment here. Just write as many things as you want. Now, we had asked this question before, what signals expertise? Well, let's transfer that list from those sticky notes and let's make it go down here. So this is where you put it in the vertical column, right? So here we go. So we talked about degrees, if you've been interviewed, if you've been published, if you have multiple offices, your credentials, 5 years experience, blah, blah, blah. It goes on down the list. And so when we had prioritized the list with my pro coaching group, we highlighted these 6. And I'm not saying that I even agree with this. I'm going to repeat this because you can come up with whatever you want. But if you do this exercise in the sequence in which I just talked about, it'll start to reveal something. Now, what I'm going to do is ask you guys all to place a dot or a check mark, whatever it is, in the segments that you meet the qualifications for. Check out what happens right now. So let's say this is my map. Well, I did get a degree from a reputable design school, and I was trained to do logo design. So that's it. I've never been interviewed about it. I've never published anything. I don't have offices selling logo design services. So it's pretty thin. One can even argue, I don't even know if I have 5 years experience just doing logo design work. I've not put in my 10,000 hours. I put in some time. And then you go across the board here. And you can see where it's lit up is in an animation category because for 24 years, I ran a motion design firm called Blind. And I have been published. I do teach people how to do motion design and animation. I do charge a price premium. And so if you look at your grid now, without the yellow dots in here, of course, what does that tell you about how others see you? What does that tell you about how others see you?
They probably see you most for what you're an expert in and see you less for what you aren't.
Well, the question here, Tom, if you had to guess and look into your crystal ball, of the list that people wrote for discipline, how many people could check off they have amazing testimonials, they have received recognized awards, that they are able to charge a price premium, they've taught other people how to do this thing, they've worked with a Fortune 1000 client, and they have at least 3 killer case studies?
Not
like
many.
Even for me, not many. So what we're starting to understand is we've been running around thinking that we're being perceived as an experts, that we should command a price premium, when in fact we don't do any of those things. I'm hoping that they're starting to see a potential problem. So maybe I'm going to ask this question. It's not rhetorical. I would love for you guys to write in the comments. What does this tell you about how others see you? If you're playing along with this game, assuming you guys give me the benefit of the doubt, you suspend disbelief and you play this game with me. That first, we had asked ourselves, what signals to others expertise? And if you play that along and then you wrote all the different disciplines that you practice, now you see the problem, this whole Bruce Lee thing where we've only practiced that kick 1 time, or maybe 5 times, but definitely not 10,000 times. Okay, so go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was going to say, it makes complete sense. And I like how you're breaking it down, because I think this becomes, in people's head, it's quite overwhelming, confusing. It's quite an ephemeral topic. And so I'm seeing a lot of people here like taking screenshots, putting this thing in Excel themselves, because people like it to be tangible like this.
Right. So I just would like for you, if you take nothing away from this, call today, this webinar, I want you to make the grid and write in the different disciplines that you practice. And then on the column 1, write in there like the things that signal to other people from a distance. This is very important because all the answers I got from Twitter required a lot of explanation, and they probably do not understand the marketing game and the fact that they think people will invest 30 minutes to 2 hours to figure out every single person that they're potentially going to hire. Doesn't happen, at least not initially. You have to make the first cut. Okay, let's jump forward here. We did talk about discipline for industry, so I don't want to forget the industry part. I'm not going to spend too much time. What industry do you work for? And there are certain things that all industries have, and these are common. So this is the industry checklist, okay? Do they have a trade organization? Usually when they do, they have a conference that they meet at least annually, and there is a conference for every trade organization industry that's out there. Do they circulate a newsletter or potentially a magazine? Do they do regular meetups? And this is really important. I got this from David Baker's The Business of Expertise. And he said that if you're not sure, you can actually go to NAICS, N-A-I-C-S, which is the North American Industry Classification System. It's a horrible government-looking website. But if you search,
my eyes.
Yeah, it looks terrible. Yeah, burn this from your brain in a little bit, okay? So you can type in a search, like if you type in accountants or something, it'll tell you the size of the industry, how many members, how much money there is in that group. And so you can start to find out some really interesting things. So if not now, do it at some point and type it in, because there's a classification code for every recognized industry.
I love that. We got a great comment from Miguel as well, who was saying from the exercise that you just completed, Chris, it's not even just about generalization and specialization with your services, but we get to know ourselves better through that exercise. So there you go, guys.
Fantastic.
Self-awareness for free.
There's a little mindset self-awareness thrown in as a bonus. No extra charge. Okay. Let's get into it. Thank you for reading that comment. So application. Let's figure this thing out. In real life, how does this work? Let's look at it. So I don't know if you know this or not, but the market leader is generally 3 times bigger than number 2. And number 2 is 3 times bigger than number 3. So if you look at it, basically in the cell phone space or in creative software, whoever the market leader is, or personal computers or headphones, they usually occupy 60% of the market share. And you can see it drops off pretty quickly. So if you're not number 1, it's going to be tough. And if you're number 573, you basically have a percentage of a percentage of percentage. So you basically have the smallest part of the market. And as you move down market, there's less profit and you compete mostly on price. I hope you guys understand this. So the whole point of positioning is to reduce or eliminate competition. So if you can get into the top 3, you're doing pretty well. If you can be the market leader, the only person who does something, that is incredible. Jonathan Stark talked about this. I don't want to be a graphic designer. I want to be the graphic designer.
I love that.
That's how you get to number 1.
Chris, I spoke recently about this, and the analogy I used was when you're starting out, it's almost like you're stuck in quicksand because there are so many other people doing what you're doing. It's like you're desperately trying to pull yourself out and get to that next level just so you can actually stop and breathe for a second. Because ironically, the higher up you go, yes, you encounter a different set of issues at that level. But in terms of competitiveness and standing out, it gets so much easier because it's like I can just pull myself away from that, like, you know, throng of people, because there's millions of designers you're competing with when you start out. But if you just go up a level and up another level, it might be thousands or even hundreds or dozens or no one.
Right. Okay, let's keep going here, because if you guys were to ask yourself, of the designers that you know, like when you think of Aaron Draplin, what do you think about in terms of creative service? Creative service.
I was going to say instantly my mind just went beard. But in terms of creative service, I think of his style, of course, like his very distinctive style.
His style for doing what, though? What does he do? What does he make?
Mainly that kind of like logo design.
Logo design.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Beirut, logo design. Paul Scher, logo design. And they capture the mind share of the market. So when you think logo design, you think maybe one of those 3. You don't think John Smith in Podunk, USA.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And because John Smith is so deep down there, or Jane Smith, okay? They're so far down. Let's apply this to something, because I don't want this to be abstract and theoretical. This is not an academic conversation. Let's look at this in real life, okay? Let's say you have to get a car service, and this is your car. This is your baby. I don't own this car, but it looks quite beautiful. And you have to get a service, right? Where do you take your Porsche? Do you take it to the Porsche mechanic, the imports mechanic, or the domestic mechanic? And this tells you a lot about how our brains work. If you have something that you care about, your brand, your business, your company, your product, your startup, or even your car, you generally want to take it to the place where they've spent a lot of time doing the same thing for the same type of customer over and over again, generally speaking. So most people would answer this question, because you don't want to just give your baby to someone who just works on cars. They don't understand it. Okay, so let's take this onto even a simpler level. So when you're in mood for, say, Mexican food, where do you go? Would you go to a Japanese restaurant, a Greek restaurant? Where do you go? And if you're in the mood for sushi, where would you go?
Mm-hmm.
You would be a little skeptical of a place that sells a lot of different things when you want something very specific.
Yeah, I mean, those restaurants are super off-putting, where it's like, we have 10 different types of cuisine. And it's like, well,
right.
None of them are going to be that good.
Right. And we accept that. So if we want variety and we don't really want high quality, then we accept that. And those things are called buffets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And generally
Chris,
speaking,
everyone now is like, thanks a lot, Chris. Now I'm hungry.
wait, hold on. but hold on. If you're able to say, like, you know what, I'm really interested in Mexican and Japanese, what can I do? Well, you invent sushi burrito.
Nice.
And this is actually quite delicious. So this exists between two very crowded spaces, between Japanese cuisine and Mexican cuisine. There's only a few that fuse those two together. And that's how you are able to do that too. So I'm not saying that there isn't room for the polymaths, that people can do lots of different things, but you have to figure out an elegant way to bring those things together. Okay? Okay, so the question for the audience is under what circumstances do you pick a generalist? That you yourself, in the real world, think about that.
A supermarket. Or are we talking individuals, no. I guess?
Services, not a marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a rhetorical question, thinking like, when do you prefer a generalist? Do you, Tom?
Rarely.
Right.
I mean,
Tom, like you have a nice head of hair, right?
You have two kinds.
No, you do. Let's just say that. So when you go to get a haircut, do you want to go to a beauty salon for women? Do you want to go to a kid's haircut place? Or do you want to go to a salon where they service distinguished gentlemen like yourself?
Of course the latter, Chris.
You don't want to go to a dog grooming service to get your haircut, do you?
Yeah, that was a bad Friday.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep plowing through it because I want to answer your questions. Let's keep doing it. We're in the home stretch here. Let's talk about the benefits, okay? I want to explain some things, and we're going to talk a little business right here, or Ben likes to call the biz nasty, okay? I'm going to ask you guys, what is your marketing budget? What do you guys spend to acquire customers? Well, there's this thing called the CPA, cost per acquisition, and people don't know how much money they should spend. Well, the better question to answer is, what's the lifetime customer value to you? Meaning, if you take how much money, how much revenue you make in a year, let's say it's $1 million and you have 10 customers. Well, the lifetime customer value for you is 100,000. So if we look at that and we say, okay, lifetime customer value for me of one new client a year is about $100,000. If I were to spend 10% of that for marketing to acquire it, people would say that's pretty reasonable. Meaning, if you can spend $10,000 to make $90,000, I would probably do that deal every single day, forever, infinite. Basically, even if you had to spend $80,000 to bring in $20,000 of net new income, you still might be out ahead. So I'm going to get into that. This is a post that I shared on my Instagram, if you guys are following me there. So let's look at the $10,000 marketing budget.
You should be, guys, because, yeah, Chris is definitely one of the front runners when it comes to marketing creative content.
Thank you very much, Tom. So let's say that you have a $100,000 client that you can acquire, and you're going to spend 10% of that. So $10,000 is your marketing budget. Now, if we take that and we look at this model of this funnel being, if you're undifferentiated and if you're trying to market to everybody, a lot of people, it's going to be very thin. What you want to do is you want to define an ideal market, somebody specific, the smallest viable audience, and market to them. And people are so afraid that they're going to overshoot and get into a place where there's not enough customers. More often than not, people are far short of going over the mark. So don't worry about that. Keep narrowing it down. Now let's take a look at that. Okay, let's do some math together. So if we have $10,000 to market to a very big audience, a very big market, 10,000 people, the effective budget is $1. So how many ideas can you generate that can get you a customer for $1? Well, really not many. Well, let's change the number. Let's just reduce it down because that's kind of ridiculous. 10,000 customers, that's a lot. If we can identify 1,000 customers, then that would be $10 per customer. So it's looking better. $10, you could probably run a very finite campaign. You might be able to print something very nice and send it to them for $10. Well, things are pretty good. What if you reduce that? Let's keep the logic going. What if you reduce it down to 100 potential customers? Now you have $100 to spend per customer. That seems like a pretty decent budget, but relative to trying to acquire a $100,000 client, that's tiny. Spending $100 to get a $100,000 client doesn't seem like it's logical or it's weighted fairly. Now, if you only had to market to 10 customers, your budget would be $1,000. So the question here is, if I were to give each and every one of you $1,000 to come up with a really super creative idea on how you can acquire a new customer, you can sit there and daydream. Like, what could you do? Mm-hmm. Maybe the question is,
in fact, I'd like to see this in the comments, guys. I want to see how creative you're feeling today. So if we get some ideas, how would you spend $1,000 to try and land a client? And I want to see, like, the more experimental and wackier, the better, I would say. We'll see what comes in.
Yeah. What can you do to stand out? So the question is, what couldn't you do? Because I don't know if I've ever sat around and thought to myself, even though we've worked with multi-million-dollar projects before, did I spend $1,000 to acquire that client? Okay, so what's the point of me even asking you all these kinds of questions to make your brain hurt, talking about business and stuff? Well, here's the different way of looking at this, okay? 1,000 watts of energy. If you use 1,000 watts and you put it into a light bulb, well, it'll illuminate a room. But if you spend 1,000 watts of energy and you channel that into a laser, you can punch a hole through steel. One lights up a room, it's general. One is super hyper focused, can burn a hole through steel. And I got that from Alan Dibb's book, The One-Page Marketing Plan. Okay, let's wrap this up. The summary here, the summary. Okay, what you want to do is you want to choose a focus. You want to be able to articulate that via a consistent claim of expertise. This is the discipline I do for this industry, and it's super narrow. And then what you do is over time, you add the missing skills. I want to remind everybody, because this is super scary, because like, how can I call myself a branding firm for vegan restaurants when I've not really done that before? Well, here's the thing. Everyone is an imposter for a period of time at the beginning. Everyone. I'm an athlete. Well, not yet, but I will be, because I'm going to work on it. So to sum it up, what you want to do is you want to go an inch wide and a mile deep. And that's all I got for you.
Love it. Thank you, Chris. Mm-hmm. It's just me here, but I'm still going to clap it up. Guys, show some love in the comments. I think that was super helpful. And I said before, but I love the examples, because I think that's what makes it tangible for people. We can all just, rant about being a specialist and that being generally a good idea. But I think the examples there and the frameworks are really going to help people understand. Oh, look at this. People loving it in the comments. Great. When you speak, everything else stops, Lewis says. I don't know if you've done that before. I love it. Okay, so we're going to jump into some Q&A. Are you pretty good on time, Chris?
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing. Like 15, 20 minutes maybe?
Yeah, no problem.
Incredible.
Let's do some value.
All right, let's drop some value bombs for people. So if you haven't yet, put any questions in the Ask a Question feature directly below this live stream. and you can also upvote some of your favorite questions. And I'm going to start with the most upvoted ones.
Okay,
so,
I'm ready.
Jo-Marie says, what are some guiding questions you can ask yourself when trying to define your specialty, especially when you have multiple disciplines? I mean, was that really the spreadsheet, or is there anything else, or you think that's the best starting point?
I think that's a good place to start, because we can do lots of different things, and we need to start thinking about what we already have an advantage in already. So if you have written articles, if you've published things, if you've spoken about a specific topic, that's a pretty good indication you're on a path. And if you don't like that, that's okay. You can change your mind. Like I said, in the beginning of your life and your career, you can try lots of things, and that's totally okay. And you could be very successful at it too.
Yeah, exactly that. Shrew has a really cool question, actually, saying, what do you do when you choose to specialize in one area, but then you start to lose interest or burn out? Is it a bad thing to choose more than one area to specialize in to maintain a balance?
Yeah, I think that's a common fear of creative people, that if you choose something, you're going to burn out in it. And I just think it's mostly an unfounded fear. If you enjoy something, if you're passionate, if it feels like time disappears, and you find that you look at yourself, it's 3 in the morning, and what are you doing? That's a pretty good sign that you love doing that. And so generally speaking, I would encourage people to do things that make them happy, that they love, that you can't take away from them. Start there. Obviously, if you are working at a fast food restaurant, you're flipping burgers and dropping fries, no judgment, but if that's what you're doing, and your soul cries for something more, I wouldn't advise you to become an expert at that. That doesn't seem like it's worth your time, because you really don't care.
And I mean, do you get a lot of people, Chris, who do kind of think of specialization as a life sentence? Because I know I hear this all the time, and it's like, you can pivot anytime you want. You can change anytime you want. Just because you commit for the short term and give it a good taste, it doesn't mean you're locked in for life. And people get really terrified about that.
Yeah, I think people get terrified of that, but I think it's something deeper. And I want to get deep with you guys here for a second. I think the reason why people don't want to specialize is because, first of all, it requires you to make a decision. Making decisions is very hard. If you look at the word decide, the word side, the root word of decide, side, means to kill, like homicide, suicide, right? So side means to kill.
Dark.
It is dark, and I want to talk about that a little bit, because if I decide I'm going to do A and not B or C or D, I'm killing those options off. So that's part one. It's hard to make a decision, and we need a little help there. The other part to why I think people don't want to pursue one path is because they put themselves in competition with a very clear target. So if I want to be the world's fastest sprinter, it becomes very clear to me that I have to run up against Usain Bolt, and that's so far away from where I'm at in skill that I prefer not to do that. So it's a safe place. And I was reading somewhere that it says procrastination is basically the byproduct of you making an excuse of not pursuing something. You know you need to do it, you procrastinate, and so that's just an excuse. It's the delay of something that you know you need to do. And so I think that's where a lot of this mindset comes from, is I don't want to expose myself that I'm actually really not good at logo design. So therefore, I won't make that claim, and nobody can pin me down.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I'm seeing in the comments, people are like, I never thought of it that way. Shining a light on this, guys. Christina says, what do you do if you want to specialize in one area that you know doesn't bring in enough clients and money? Do you branch out to a second area just to pay the rent?
Okay, so this is where service for industry comes into play. This is a very common question, that you think the market is too small. So I'm going to challenge Christina to tell me what market that is, and then to type that into the NAICS website, NAICS website, and you'll be shocked to see how big these industries are. I was, because once I typed in some broad thing and I clicked the wheel to turn down, the twirl, you can see how big the industries are, and many of them are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Check it out.
Yeah, let us know in the comments as well, Christina, if you're with us right now. What is this industry you're talking about? Because I'd love to run that by Chris. And we hear this all the time. I've had people think of design cuts and what we do in our industry as so niche. They're like, oh, that's cute. You like sell fonts and stuff like that. That must be nice. you're serving like 12 people, and it's a much bigger market than people realize. Okay, so Mary, we've got, does specializing mean I do illustrations, or does it mean I do whimsical vector kids illustrations in pastel colors? So I guess she's kind of asking that thing of like how deep do you go?
Okay, if you follow Blair's rules about removing the adjectives, so whimsical, pastel colors, blah, blah, blah. So what you do is you do illustration. Now you have to pick an industry. Who do you do illustrations for? And then you can go back in and refine that. But I need to know what industry you work for. So if you do illustrations for children's book covers for disabled children, that seems very clear to me now. And what's really cool about this is to use Seth Godin's rule, which is, can you pick your audience out from a crowd? So when you say I do whimsical illustrations with pastel colors, there's no audience that's mentioned here at all. So we have a problem already. So if you pick an audience and you can see them. So once you get clear about who your audience is, the industry that you want to work for, it becomes a lot easier to figure out like, well, now I know how to find them. They always meet on Tuesdays at this place, and this is what they talk about. And this is their Facebook group. This is the trade organization that they belong to. This is the guild that they have. This is the award gala that they put on every year. Maybe I need to start to attend those things. So this is really where you start to get clarity. And when you get clear on who you're talking to, it becomes a lot easier to write and to target them.
Yes, 100%. Tanu asks, how do you get good work and gain trust of people if you're not that experienced and you haven't landed big brands yet you want to establish yourself?
Okay, so what you need to do is you need to mitigate, you need to reduce risk. You're going to reduce the risk down. So if you claim that I do X, Y, and Z, and the client doesn't see you as such, they see you as a really risky option. One way of reducing risk, one way to reduce it down, is to potentially lower the price. And like I said, when you don't know what you're doing and there's lots of competition, one of the byproducts of that is the price gets pulled down. And it's okay when you're starting out. When I first started doing brand strategy, the first 2 times I did it for free. I just added it on top of the services I already provided. I got some experience and I was able to have a case study to show for the work that I was doing. And that's kind of important for other people to see.
I think a bunch of your fans watching live just had a heart attack when you said that you've done work for free, given your reputation in the pricing area.
No, I've done stuff for free for a lot of different things, but I do it in a very strategic way. If I'm trying to do something new, I offer it as value add to something I've already been paid for so that there's no risk for the client. I'm not asking the client to pay for my learning on the job. That would not be fair to them. But it didn't take many jobs for me to go from free to $10,000.
George as well asks, can you say that specialist equals a freelancer and a generalist is in-house, more likely to make more money alone but focused on one area, but companies expect you to be more of a generalist when they hire you, like an agency or a permanent role?
No, I believe you're conflating 2 very different things. Generalists and specialists exist both in-house and out-of-house, and that they're not even related to each other, okay? Because you can have somebody in-house, which we have had, who is on staff on our payroll, who is our technical director for 3D visual effects.
That's pretty specialist.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That makes complete sense. Aditi says, so are you trying to say if I'm a professional in logo designing, I should concentrate on that to become an expert and limit my services for only logo designing and charge a higher amount for that? I mean, is the answer again industry and try and niche and specialize in those ways?
Yes, Tom. Tom, you're picking up something here.
I'm seeing some patterns here, Chris. Yeah.
Yes, I think you are. Maybe you should run a company, Tom.
Maybe you should.
Okay. Fair.
Okay, so this is a good one. HYR says, if you've been a generalist for a long time, how do you decide what to kick to practice? So, I mean, this is kind of what you've covered, but instead of like what you pick, I guess it's like, how do you eschew certain things? What are the things you should maybe like shed and get rid of quickest?
Well, just use a chart. It'll tell you. Ideally, what you do is this. Okay, so we're talking about this in the very beginning of your life and your career. You do lots of different things, so it expands and it just moves up and down, and that's totally cool. And at some point, you're like, "This is profitable. I'm good at this, and there's a market for this, and it's trending upwards. I'll focus on that." And then you establish expertise. So you take this thing that goes up and you collapse it down, right? So it's like a funnel that opens up and then it collapses back down, and you're becoming really successful. And now you're known within a circle of people like, I'm top 10, I'm top 5 at doing that thing. Now, then inevitably what happens is you become so well known for doing logo design. Somebody asks you, well, would you consider designing the package for us? At that point in time, you have the luxury of making that decision. I will now expand out and add some services because so many people are asking for it, and that it makes sense for me to do this. What you do is now you have an anchor or what people know you for, and you're adding additional things. And so you're totally okay because now you're known for something and people perceive you as an expert.
Love it. Andy, I think you're going to like this question, Chris. Andy says, Chris, you often recommend great, insightful books. You have been known to read from time to time, Chris, on the subjects that you speak about. What books would you recommend on this particular subject?
On specialization?
Yeah, specialization and niching.
I don't know. I read some books from time to time. This one, The Business of Expertise. This one, Pricing Creativity. And this is not for show. This is totally unprepared. But basically, I'm surrounded by books, right? I would also advise you to read the book, The One-Page Marketing Plan by Alan Dibb. Also, This is Marketing from Seth Godin. If you can read those 4 books, you're going to be a superstar.
I love it. I'm halfway through Seth Godin's. I keep getting derailed, but it's on my bedside table right now.
Yeah, it's because there's a lot to uncover in that book. I'm on my 3rd read right now.
That's it. I don't skim read that one. It's like, it gets me thinking. Rachel has a pretty good question here. Nice. Rachel has a good question. Any tips for what to do if you're pigeonholed in a niche that you no longer want to be in? What are the best steps for transitioning?
Okay, that's a good question. This is time for a total reboot. New name, new identity, new website. And it's hard. It's hard. Once people put you in a place, it's very difficult to move. And this is why the book Positioning, there's a book called Positioning. I have it somewhere around here. It's very important to get your positioning right the first time. Very difficult. So if you think about the brands like Xerox, what do you think about? Photocopiers. So when Xerox makes a potato chip snack, you're like, no, I'm not going to eat it because they're about photocopy.
Well, that's really the thing that springs to mind there is Richard Branson with Virgin Condoms, which was like a public failure.
Yeah. Kind of tough.
Yeah, it is. Sneha asks, will having a side hustle ruin one's chances of being considered a specialist? That's a good question too. Well,
I want to, I have to make some assumptions here that your main thing, whatever it is that you do that people know you for, why are you exploring something else? And shouldn't your side hustle be your main hustle? Or are you in a state of transition? That's where I'm a little confused, right? So if you love something, like for example, right now, I love teaching people. I love making content for people to consume on YouTube and on Instagram. So my entire life now is about reading books, disseminating what I've learned, going to workshops, speaking at conferences, and conducting workshops myself. And this is all I do. And I've given up pretty much everything else in my life. I've stopped watching TV, reading newspaper. I've stopped doing almost everything because this is what I love. And right now, I work all the time, but I don't see it as work because I'm really focused and I love what it is I'm doing. At some point, if I change my mind, I will, and that's totally okay.
Yep. By any chance, have you seen the Netflix documentary about Bill Gates, Chris?
I have not. People have mentioned that. I need to see it.
I think you'd like it. And I thought of you. He's got a tote bag full of books that he carries around everywhere.
I heard about that.
Right. And he goes on retreats for 1 week where all he'll do is just immerse himself in reading.
Yes. He's an accomplished speed reader, I believe. He can read like 10 books in a week.
It's insane. They've got shots of him reading and his eyes are just, and he absorbs it like very, very deeply as well.
Yeah. He's Bill Gates though.
This is true.
Yes, he's exceptional, right?
Yeah, he certainly is.
Yes.
It's super interesting though. John has a bit of a kind of off-topic question, but if you're happy to answer it, it's
Sure,
quite an interesting one. Have you ever failed? And if so, how do you handle failure?
Yeah, I fail all the time. Seth Godin talks about this. Whoever fails the most wins. And that means something, because innovation is inherently messy. You do things that just are wasteful, and things don't work out, and that's totally okay. The key here is to not have a failure that is catastrophic, that sends you into financial, emotional, intellectual bankruptcy. That's what we're trying to avoid. So what you want to do is you want to make small gambles, lots of them, and keep measuring and iterating and revising. And that's what we do. If you look at all the content that we create, some things are terrible and we learn. Some things are great and we try to do that again. And sometimes we have a hit and sometimes we don't. Totally okay. But in business, I've had several failures. For example, some of you guys know us from the school. That was a partnership that failed. And I've had multiple partnerships that have failed. That's why I put out that video, why I don't want to partner ever again.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So I've had partnerships that fail. I've had business relationships that fail, that have cost me tens of thousands of dollars in either unpaid invoices or just paying to get rid of somebody.
And so I guess what you're saying is you have continual small failures and learn from them, but even the big, more catastrophic failures are just opportunities to learn.
Yeah, I mean, by definition, a catastrophic failure would be the end. So if we fail to take care of the planet and humans can't exist anymore, well, that would be a failure. If you really have to go into bankruptcy and just liquidate everything, I would consider you've gone past that point. And what we're trying to do is avoid that. I'm going to butcher this quote, but it's from Peter Drucker, the godfather of business management consulting, right? He said something like, all businesses exist to make enough money to pay for their failures or mistakes. So as long as you can make enough money to pay for your mistakes, you're okay.
Yeah. Super smart. Many people won't know this as well. I can see some comments being like, it's good to know you've had those experiences, Chris. I don't think you know this, Chris, but I was really badly burnt actually in business. Like I was on the floor. I thought my life was over. I was a bit younger, so it was all much more dramatic. And then I picked myself back up, and that's when I started Design Cuts. So we wouldn't be sat here if I hadn't had that gigantic failure as well. And I've found often the biggest failures give you the biggest lessons.
Yeah. So how old were you? Because you don't look that old to me. So when you say when you're younger, what are we talking about? 14?
No, I'm 31 now. Okay. And this was more like mid-20s.
Okay. And what happened?
I can't talk about it, unfortunately, in detail, but it was like bad. It was really horrendous, like people messing you around and stuff. Very common in the world of business, but yeah, I learned from that. The stuff that in the moment feels like my life's over actually can flourish.
Yeah. You know, people do like to hear about failures because it makes you feel more human and that more relatable. And sometimes it'll seem like I'm avoiding the question because people ask that. So I want to let's just make sure you guys get what you came for. If this is a pity porn failure party, let's have it. Let's go right into it. I want to tell you something. The reason why it's very difficult for me to answer the question of when have you failed, it's not because I haven't had failure, I'm trying to hide something, or I'm not being transparent. It's mostly because I do not label experiences as failure or success. I just look at them as learning opportunities. There's a thing like sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. So I don't code them in my brain. So I have to work extra hard to figure out which ones were failures by the normal definition. So I'll give you some. I failed to read the terms of a contract with my sales rep. And when she quit, I thought, great, verbal quit, I'm out. And she very stealthily waited until the contract had expired because it had a clause in it that auto-renewed without any kind of confirmation at all. So basically, and I know it's super snaky. And so my executive producer and I at that time were like, cool, we're done. And then what happened was she waited. And then the week after the contract renewed, she goes, "Hey guys, what's going on? What's the new projects?" And we were shocked to say, like, "What are you talking about? It's over." She goes, "No, we have another contract for a year, and I want money." So basically, I had to pay her, I think, over $30,000 to get out of a contract so I can hire a new salesperson. And that, you could say, like, "Oh, I was super upset. I was really upset." But then I was like, whose freaking mistake was that? That was my mistake for, first of all, signing a contract that was stupid, auto renewal, never again, and not to take people for their word. And not everybody is super trustworthy. So because somebody quits doesn't mean anything, because it has to be in writing. And so that failure, that mistake, cost me over $30,000 to pay a sales rep to go away that wasn't working for us at all. And it was, in a strange way, kind of like extortion via contract.
Yeah.
She was going to block something. Yeah.
I often think about this stuff and I think, yeah, that sucked. But if it hadn't have made you wiser, maybe you could have been screwed for $500,000 or burnt in a much worse way further down the line.
Yeah, there's a positive spin on it. After you get over the rainbow of hurt, yeah, there is. For sure. So that's one failure.
Yeah, let me know if you want to just have a group cry quickly, Chris. We can
I'll give you one other failure.
Yeah,
I'll give you one other failure that I remember, because let's just go there, you guys. Get the tissue box out. Okay, here's another failure. I had previously scheduled a meeting with the executive, like one of the main principals behind a very large branding firm. And we had agreed to have a morning meeting at, say, 10 a.m. at the office. Now, the week before this meeting, I'd been cranking away on a music video for the Ravenettes. We were working 18 hours, 19 hours a day. And the day before was the delivery. So I went home about 4 or 5 in the morning. I didn't even think about this meeting at all. So I go home totally toasty, the oily skin, the whole bit. I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I go home, and this is when sleep is like worth all the money in the world. It's priceless. I go to sleep, and then my phone starts buzzing, and it's from our office manager, and she's like, "Chris, there's a person here for you." And I had that crazy like going from super tired to like crazy panic attack. I'm like, oh my God. And then I text him, the person I was meeting. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I had worked all night last night and I completely spaced on this. And I'm super sorry. How long are you going to be there for?" He goes, "Don't worry about it. Never mind. I got to go."
Ouch.
And then I tried to apologize via email and text messaging. And he just basically cut me off, like, because he's a super important person who flew in from New York for a couple of meetings. And this was just one of them. So I totally screwed up. Totally screwed up.
And you couldn't put it back after that? Was it done?
Well, I try, right? So when you make a mistake, you own up to it. You don't make excuses, and you apologize, full-hearted apology. And what I did was I ordered some really premium, locally made cupcakes, and I delivered it to him. And I said, "I do not expect you to forgive me. This was unacceptable. This is like business mistake 101. I apologize. I hope this at least makes you feel a little bit better." He goes, "Okay, you got me. We can have a meeting now." So I did have a meeting with them, and
nice.
Yeah, but it's hard to break that first impression, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. Although handled in the right way. I mean, we've had stuff go wrong at Design Cuts, and I'm like, right, someone get a camera. It's like we're owning up. We're being super transparent, and you come out the other side looking better in many cases when you deal with it appropriately. Chris, have you got 5 more minutes? Just because I can chat with you all day.
Yep.
Amazing. Appreciate it. Aaron has a question basically about enjoyment. So I think you sold people on the benefits of specializing, but what about when it's not to do with money or anything like that or focus? It's like you truly enjoy multiple areas and it would break your heart to let go of some of them.
Okay. So this is what I'm going to say. And I think this tends to work. You want to specialize externally and you want to generalize internally. So the message that you send to the world should be, I'm a specialist. I've put in 10,000 hours to do this one thing. But what you do in your own time that you don't publicize in terms of reading, kite flying, building boats, or whatever it is you love to do that makes you really happy and makes your soul smile, do that. No problem. And that's really cool because eventually when you're doing logos for a company or an industry and they happen to also be boat builders, woo, now you're able to connect two things together.
Yeah.
And this has worked for us. So for 20 some odd years, I made commercials and directed music videos, things like that. And one of our new clients was Spike TV. It's an American channel, American network. And Spike recently launched a new show called The Ultimate Fighter, which is featuring mixed martial arts fighters from the UFC. Well, we found out about it, and on a different job, I had mentioned to them, I'm a big mixed martial arts fan. And ultimately, that led us to getting that work, and we did the show package for them for 3 or 4 seasons. That's when my interest in MMA and the UFC and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the martial arts folded into the main thing that I do. And it's pretty cool when you're able to do that.
That's awesome.
And I want to say one last little thing here for some of you generalists, diehard generalists, is there is a place for you in management, in consulting, in facilitation. Being a generalist is actually really good.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking this the other day when I saw you posted about MMA and stuff. Do you do a martial art, or are you just an appreciator?
100%. I don't know the first thing about mixed martial arts. I just watch it.
Okay, cool.
I have books on it. I read. I study the positions, but I've never stepped into a gym. I've never. Don't pick a fight with me. You win.
Okay, I was hoping to get an exclusive there live on air where everyone's like, "Chris is a kung fu master." Like, you should have lied, and everyone's like, "Damn, Chris is a badass."
Because if you lie, somebody's gonna challenge you on the street. I don't lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, get out of this chokehold. I'm like, oh, okay, I tap out. He's like, I haven't even put it on you yet.
Chris, thank you for such a fantastic final session of Design Cuts Live. That was incredible. I think it's brought so much clarity to these people. There's just been a ton of like positive support in the comments, and I think people are feeling fired up to go and specialize down in their chosen profession. So we really appreciate you joining us and being part of this whole conference.
Hey, anything for the Design Cuts community.
Appreciate that, man. I mean, sounds like a dumb question, but where's the best places to find you online? Hopefully most people know, but if you don't, we're about to link it up.
There's lots of ways. I'm going to tell you right now. You go to thefuture.com. The future is spelled without an E, so you just spell future and you drop the ego, okay? That's thefuture.com. You can find us on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook at The Future is Here. And you can find me personally everywhere else at the Chris Do, because there's only one, the Chris Do.
I love it. Everyone go check out Chris's stuff. I can't think of anyone who is giving more free value on their platform than The Future. And you may have seen we've teamed up with The Future recently, and they've been fantastic to work with. We're obviously super passionate about what we do on the product side of things, but when it comes to the business of design, they literally have a wealth of information, and they're so generous with it. So Chris, continue to do what you do. I'm a huge fan. And once again, we really appreciate you joining us today.
I will. Thank you very much, Tom, for having me. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and spending an hour or so with us. I hope you guys are blessed, and congrats. Good job, everybody. See you guys later.
Thanks, man. Chat soon.
Bye.
Bye. Guys, what a fantastic final session. Thank you so much. Let's show some love for Chris in the comments. But yeah, thank you so much for being here with us. We hope you enjoyed all the sessions over the last 4 days. It's been incredible. This is the first time we've ever done anything like this. It started as just an idea several months ago, but we said, you know what? We can never get to these conferences in America. We have so few over here in England. We said, why don't we do one ourselves? Why don't we make it free and online so everyone can attend wherever they are, free of charge? And that idea has become this reality. I'm so pumped with the quality of people that have attended. I'm just incredibly grateful to everyone who's tuned in. We hope you've had a blast. We've got a few final days of our birthday event, our 6-year birthday here at Design Cuts. We hope you enjoy the rest of the festivities. We've got all of our incredible bundles, competition, freebies. If you go to designcuts.com, you can explore all of that. And tomorrow, I'm really excited because we're going to be picking the winner of our competition, where we're giving away an iPad Pro. Not only that, we're going to be doing our final live stream of this entire event, and we're going to be letting you guys out there, yes, you pick the winner. We've narrowed it down to, I think, 6 finalists right now. And we're going to let you guys vote on who you think should win the iPad Pro. So the power is in your hands. Look out for the emails around that. Look out for the links on social. If it is ready, I don't know if it is, the team should link it up right now where you can go and register for that final hangout. It may not be ready, or it may be, but keep an eye out on all our platforms. And if you go to the competition tab on our birthday page, you'll see how to register there. But I really hope to see a bunch of you on that final live stream. We're going to have some fun. There might be some, spontaneous surprises, but I would love to hang out with each and every one of you, and we can pick that winner, give away the iPad, give away a bunch of other prizes, and wrap up this incredible event. So once again, thank you guys. It's been a blast, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Have a fantastic end of your day. Bye.